Boa noite a todas as pessoas presentes. Boas-vindas ao Sesc 24 de maio para o bate-papo Mantendo a Batida, Paisagens sonoras do ativismo negro, com a socióloga Patricia Hill Collins, acompanhada de Jaqueline Lima Santos e Márcia Lima. O Sesc é uma entidade privada de finalidade pública, criada por iniciativa do empresariado do comércio de bens, serviços e turismo, cuja missão é contribuir para a melhoria da qualidade de vida das pessoas trabalhadoras, de seus dependentes e da sociedade em geral, por meio de ações educativas, culturais, esportivas e de assistência. O encontro de hoje integra o conjunto de ações dos programas sociais voltados à valorização da diversidade cultural, reafirmando o compromisso da instituição com o reconhecimento e a promoção da cultura negra e afrodiaspóricas como fundamento da sociedade brasileira. O Sesc 24 de maio está localizado em uma área de intensa circulação de pessoas, sons e culturas, um território vivo, atravessado por diferentes identidades e práticas. Entre elas, destaca-se o hip-hop, que há décadas pulsa no centro da cidade e inspira modos de criar, conviver e resistir. Neste momento, a unidade apresenta a exposição Hip Hop 80 SP, que celebra e resgata as origens do movimento na cidade, destacando suas trajetórias, estéticas e contribuições para a memória e para o cenário artístico do país. Convidamos a todas as pessoas presentes a visitar a exposição, que segue em cartaz no 5º andar aqui da unidade até março de 2026. A atividade de hoje é fruto da parceria entre Sesc e Mecila, que é um centro internacional de estudos em ciências humanas e sociais voltado à América Latina, financiado pelo Ministério Federal Alemão de Pesquisa, Tecnologia e Espaço. Convido agora ao palco para algumas palavras o pesquisador principal do Mecila e professor da Universidade Estadual de Campinas, professor Mário Medeiros.
Olá, boa noite a todo mundo que está aqui presente. Eu gostaria de fazer apenas agradecimentos e saudação em nome do Mecila. Um agradecimento muito especial ao Sesc que nos recebe aqui, o Sesc 24 de maio, nas figuras do diretor regional, Luiz Galina, a gerente de estudos e projetos sociais, Flávia Carvalho, o gerente do Sesc 24 de maio, em nome deles, toda a equipe do Sesc que acolheu tão bem esse projeto de discutir hoje, conversar hoje com Patrícia, com Márcia, com Jaqueline. O Mecila é, como a Mônica mencionou antes, a Maria Sibila Marian Center para estudos de convivialidade e desigualdade na América Latina, é uma rede internacional de pesquisas que é financiada pelo Ministério Federal Alemão. E aqui no Brasil, ele está baseado no Centro Brasileiro de Análise e Planejamento, o SEBRAP. Essa rede que o Mecila articula, ele une a Universidade Livre de Berlim, a Universidade de Colônia, o Instituto Ibero-Americano, a USP, o SEBRAP, o Colégio de México e o CONICET, na Argentina, promovendo uma cooperação de diferentes pesquisadores de diferentes partes do mundo em torno de uma agenda de estudos sobre convivialidade e desigualdade aqui na América Latina. E também quero muito agradecer os meus colegas de Mecila, né, na figura do diretor Christopher Miller, Roberta Hess e Tomás Amorim, que tornaram tudo isso aqui possível, né, e os meus colegas investigadores e investigadoras principais do Mecila. Então, que todos nós tenhamos uma ótima noite de conversa com Patrícia, com Márcia, com Jaqueline. Muito obrigado.
Muito obrigada pelas palavras. Agradecemos também às pessoas intérpretes de Libras que estão conosco nesta noite, Érica Mota e Grace Santos. E gostaria de informar também que essa atividade ela conta com tradução simultânea em inglês-português. Quem desejar pode retirar o equipamento para acompanhar a tradução, que está disponível nas mesas aqui ao fundo da plateia. E para abrir este encontro de hoje, o Sesc tem o prazer de convidar a artista Ingrid Martins, acompanhada do músico Anderson Rodrigues. Bem-vindas.
Boa noite. Como foi dito, eu sou Ingrid Martins, ao meu lado Anderson, conhecido também como Beiço. Esse ano eu lancei um álbum chamado Música de Elevador. Se vocês puderem e quiser já salvar na sua playlist, na sua plataforma de música, esse é o momento, certo? E aí é Ingrid Martins, Música de Elevador, tá bom? Alguma coisa aconteceu com o microfone aí. Foi o retorno, né? Só para... Aí, voltou. Então, podemos. Oh, guarda, guarda esse sorriso para mim. Oh, guarda, minha mãe espera por mim. Se eu não volto, a nega chora. Minha mãe sente saudade, ora. Se eu me explicar agora, eu perco a hora, não. Posso ficar mais tempo se não acaba o busão. E pra mim não é mais cedo, pois pra norte ainda é chão. Eu ficava, se eu pudesse, eu ficava. Mas quem me espera em casa sempre fica preocupada. Ficava, se eu pudesse, eu ficava. Mas quem me espera em casa sempre fica preocupada. Mas quem me espera em casa... Oh, guarda, guarda esse sorriso para mim. Oh, guarda, minha mãe espera por mim. Guarda o meu sair de casa, rezo a preço que a reza me guarda. Sinto que sou abençoado enquanto mil cai à direita e sobre mim não cai nada. Eu temo sua chegada enquanto eu grito por dentro, minha boca tá calada. Nos becos na rua que ando, amedrontada nas madrugadas ou nos mercados que entro, nunca sozinha, acompanhada de guarda, 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 guarda. Peço que não me machuque, ainda sinto o batuque do peito. Sinto que me sobra tempo, não me acelere e guarda, espera. Disseram que tínhamos anjos, anjos que é pra guardar. Ainda não achei o meu, pensei subir uns andar. Disseram pra me guardar, mas eu me sinto bem cansada. De me guardar de mim, me guardar de todos guarda. De me guardar de mim, me guardar de todos guarda. De me guardar de mim, me guardar de todos guarda. De me guardar de mim. De me guardar de mim, me guardar de todos guarda. De me guardar de mim. Oh, guarda, guarda esse sorriso para mim. Acho que já deu para entender o refrão. Quem souber e puder, vem comigo. Mantém, hein? Mantém, hein? Oh, guarda, guarda esse sorriso para mim. Oh, guarda, minha mãe espera por mim. Oh, guarda, seu brinquedo de antecipa fim. A todos aqui que estão presentes nessa noite, eu me chamo Ingrid Martins, o beiço. Ô, guarda, guarda o que for melhor de mim.
Muito obrigada, Ingrid e Anderson. Bom, Mantendo a batida, Paisagens sonoras do ativismo negro, tem como proposta debater o ativismo negro a partir do conceito de paisagens sonoras, que foi desenvolvido por Patricia Hill Collins. Ela defende que as pessoas negras que cresceram durante fases específicas da luta por liberdade usam a música e o som para compreender e atuar em seus mundos sociais. Para discutir como essa ideia ecoa nas diferentes realidades dos Estados Unidos e do Brasil, eu chamo ao palco agora as nossas convidadas, Jaqueline Lima Santos, Márcia Lima e Patricia Hill Collins. Por favor, podem se acomodando à vontade. Bom, enquanto elas se acomodam, eu vou apresentando as nossas convidadas. A Jaqueline Lima Santos, ela é doutora em antropologia social pela Unicamp e pela Universidade de Harvard. Ela atua como professora, pesquisadora e consultora nas áreas de equidade, raça, gênero, diversidade, educação, infância e juventude, história e cultura afro-brasileira e africana. Ela recebeu o prêmio das organizações Fórum África, ONU Mulheres, Câmara Municipal de Sorocaba e Núcleo Ciência pela Infância. E desenvolve pesquisa sobre hip-hop em São Paulo. Muito bem-vinda, Jaqueline. Márcia Lima é professora do Departamento de Sociologia da Faculdade de Filosofia, Letras e Ciências Humanas da Universidade de São Paulo, onde coordena o programa de pós-graduação em Sociologia. Ela é pesquisadora sênior associada ao Centro Brasileiro de Análise e Planejamento, o SEBRAP. Os seus temas de investigação são desigualdades raciais e relações raciais, com ênfase nos temas de gênero e raça, educação, mercado de trabalho e políticas de ações afirmativas. Boas-vindas. E, por fim, não menos importante, Patricia Hill Collins é professora emérita de Sociologia na Universidade de Maryland e de Estudos Afro-Americanos na Universidade de Cincinnati. É autora de livros fundamentais como Pensamento Feminista Negro, Conhecimento, Consciência e a Política do Empoderamento e Interseccionalidade, ambos com múltiplas edições, além da antologia Raça, Classe e Gênero, coeditada com Margaret Anderson. Ela foi a primeira mulher afro-americana a presidir a Associação Americana de Sociologia em 2008. Recentemente foi eleita para a Academia Americana de Artes e Ciências, em 2022, e recebeu o prestigioso prêmio Berggruen de Filosofia e Cultura em 2023. Muito bem-vindas, Jaqueline, Márcia e Patrícia. Um excelente debate para nós.
At the day it's so I'm gonna have to stand so I can see. Sorry, no problem. I'm gonna get one under around down here. Okay. Your point.
Hello.
Oi. Oi. Ish. I have to be able to see the screen, so which I cannot see if I'm on the stage. But this way I get to look at you a bit more closely. Let me see if you're a good-looking audience. I expected no less. In Brazil, where everyone is beautiful. Almost everyone. Let's see. Here we are. My talk tonight. Keeping the beat. I'm going to walk around while I give this talk as well. So you know, don't be surprised if I stand next to you and make a point. If I'm saying anything that appears to be directly related to you, it is not. All right? So if you're feeling guilty about anything, just get over it. All right. Keeping the beat. Soundscapes of Black activism. Where did this talk come from? Why am I doing this talk now? Because right now I'm living in a country where there's so many people who are discouraged about what is going on. If you read the news, you know that even though there is not an explicit attack on Black people, because that would be a no-no, I'll talk about that later, there has been a concerted effort to roll back all of the gains that have been made by Black people and other people of color and other groups in the United States who have been working diligently for generations for equity and social justice. Now, that's the reality of it. You can pretty it up and call it lots of other things, but this is a period of significant backlash. Now, many people around me are sad, or they are afraid, or they are, let's go do something about this. And they run around in little circles, not knowing what to do, except to yell, the house is on fire, the house is on fire, what should we do? I'm here to think through, what should we do? And I'm going to do that by looking directly at what I'm going to call Black history, the long arc of Black freedom struggle. Now, my talk tonight is about Black people, but it is not just for Black people or about the issues that affect only Black people. These are general themes. When you talk about freedom and social justice, this applies to more than just Black people. But tonight, I'm grounding my argument in the experiences of Black people because in many ways, those experiences have been ground zero for those of others as well. Are you still there? This is your opportunity to run away, all right? And if I look this way and then you all run out the door, I'll know, and I will stay and talk to the remaining two people. So what I'm doing tonight is trying to develop an argument about activism that is not just reactive, that really expands our understanding of what that might be under all kinds of conditions. And I can't seem to change this. What? Did it change? What did I do? No, that's not it. There. Up. Yep. What did I do? There we are. I have a PowerPoint for you. I'm working from my PowerPoint. 3 points. Part 1. Black freedom struggle and Black cultural politics. I'm going to argue that Black freedom struggle in the United States and globally, but I'm focusing on the U.S., is a long struggle, but that also Black cultural politics as a strategy has been central to that particular struggle. I'm trying to push back against the notion that politics is just what happens in government, or politics is something that just happens with a protest that you can see. I want to create space for activism that is long-term, ongoing, and that appears in places where you least expect it. Second, I'm going to move on to develop and deepen that understanding of Black cultural politics by investigating the term soundscapes of Black activism. What does that mean? How does sound and movement and music that we just heard, which was all about that, how does that create a climate for political activism that sustains people during lean times such as those of today? And part 3, I'm going to briefly touch on, with the time that we have left, Black hip-hop and Black cultural politics. I want to look at the possibilities of what hip-hop might be and what it's already doing. And for those of you who are interested in learning more about hip-hop, or maybe you're leaders, we have an exhibition in this building that is wonderful that you should go and see and walk through and take your time with. Now, I'm not arguing that I'm an expert in hip-hop. I'm a student, so I'm willing to learn. So where are we with this? Come on. Did this happen? What did I do last time? Did I do a special dance? What did I do? You know what it is? I have to turn around. It doesn't want me. There we go. Whew. This is going to be a long PowerPoint if I keep this up. Maybe I'll learn this soon. So, Black freedom struggle and Black cultural politics. Here is my fundamental question. It is in red. This is the question I have been investigating my entire intellectual career as well as my life. What will it take for Black people to be free? Now, this is both a political question, as in, what will it take? We can do something, but what does it mean to be free? What will it take for Black people to be free? This first slide is about the long arc of Black freedom struggle and answering that particular question. And this is Nina Simone. If you know her classic song, I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free. You should Google it, because the lyrics, I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. I wish I could sing, get rid of the chains binding me. That's a song that you can hum to yourself. You can sing out loud. You can sing with other people. It's part of freedom struggle. Imagining that. See if that worked. That's it. The long arc of Black freedom struggle. What will it take for Black people to be free? Well, let me just give you a sense of the overarching reason. This is an existential question. The question of imagining freedom. If you cannot imagine freedom, why would you try and move toward it? You have to believe that it is a possibility, even though it might be a horizon. It's also a political question. Strategies for moving toward freedom. If you believe that it's possible, what would that take? Now, I know I'm in Brazil, and I wish I could give the talk I really want to give. But I'm working with, on the right, the experiences of people of African descent in the United States. 406 years of anti-Black racism. Can I say it that clearly? Do you know how long 406 years is? Oh, Of course you do, because it's been longer in Brazil. On the right, we have 1619, when the first people of African descent were taken to the United States in Virginia. That's where they landed. That's where my father grew up. To the present. And in that, only 160 years of formal freedom after the abolition of slavery in 1865. But when I look to Brazil, I see even a longer history, the long arc of Black freedom struggle, because it starts earlier. 1538, maybe, best I could find. 499 years, 137 years of formal freedom. That's not a long time, people. And you cannot assume that because slavery was legally outlawed, that the next day everybody got up and said, whoops, my bad. We did slavery for how long? We're not doing that anymore. You cannot expect that, because the relations of freedom and non-freedom, or the dehumanization of people who are deemed to be Black and not free, is in the institutions of society itself. So when I talk about the long arc of Black freedom struggle, and looking not just to the oppression, but looking to the nature of the struggle, to theorize the struggle that it takes to not only survive, but to grow and to push back and to achieve every single thing that has been achieved, even if there are forces that want to take it back. That's the nature of this talk. Can you hear that? If nothing else, I'm not saying you should, you could go home and just think about that. But I'm not going to let you go. You cannot leave. Those of you in that row over there, you cannot leave. You must stay a little longer. Strategic sites of Black activism. So what I've been working with, or what I call 4 different sites of activism. Now, when people think about activism, they often start with protest politics, this one down on the bottom. The corner, you'll see a graphic of Black Lives Matter, which in many ways is an archetypal view of Black activism. We think of protest politics, whether they are collective movements or whether they are grassroots movements, or even if it's just the protest of one person who refuses to do something. Now, that's really important. But what tends to happen during periods of repression is these politics become increasingly dangerous. And people tend to think, if they don't see protest, that means consent. I don't think so. It's one side of politics that's visible and crucial. The second site would be right above it, institutional politics. Now, many of us, protest is against something that an institution is doing, institutional policy. But what we don't realize is that a lot of activism occurs within institutions. You institutional insiders figure out a way to work the rules of the system. Now, we have the graphic on the top here, Barack Obama and Michelle Obama looking amazingly young and spry at this point, because a lot has happened since he was president, correct? But this would be the penultimate achievement of institutional insiderism. But we also know that that was not enough. In fact, if anything, this particular election generated a backlash that we are now experiencing. But I want to move over to the right-hand side. And this is the side that people don't think of as being political, because very often this side on the left is the masculine side. It's the public sphere. But when you move over to the right, survival politics is basically building community. Now, I love this whole idea of talking about building community institutions, sometimes in secret, sometimes in one's own house, family, religion, civic organizations, or for Brazil, quilombismo, because that's an idea I think is quite powerful that I would love to know more about or think more about for the U.S. But I'm not going to focus on that, because I think the sphere that is least often identified as political is cultural politics. And that is the notion of ideas and knowledge. And there's freedom up there again. How we envision freedom, how we move toward it, how we actually organize, how do ideas work? So Black cultural politics, knowledge as a terrain of struggle. This means that ideas in everyday life that create meaning and guide actions. You couldn't make it through a day without having ideas about what should happen. Ideas really matter. You can choose to disbelieve everything. You can choose to believe everything. Ideas cannot be tamed. They can be shared, they can be suppressed, but once they're out there, it's hard to put them back in the bottle. Cultural politics, knowledge as a terrain of struggle, struggling over the meaning of ideas. Democracy is a pretty good example of that. A lot of struggles over that right now. But I want to focus on areas of culture that are often not seen as essential, as the bedrock of politics that create those meanings that help us make sense of the world. Music, poetry, fiction, dance, drama, photography, and film offer spaces of creativity that build Black communities and sustain Black solidarity. The way you create a fully human being is through your own creation. And these ideas or these mechanisms are central to that. You still with me? This is kind of a heavy-duty talk for Friday evening. Can you all handle heavy duty? Is this the heavy-duty side and this is the lightweight side? Or is this the heavy-duty side and that's the lightweight side? Or maybe I should go in the back and find the people who are dozing off. Yeah, I see you back there. I see you. Right, yeah. Oh, nope, right here, you. Okay. That's avoiding eye contact for a reason. All right. But anyhow, notice how I highlighted music, because I'm going to make the case that Black cultural politics is very much vested in forms of creativity that are these forms, that are not necessarily through formal institutions where you have to go to school to know how to do it, but where it's shared. And music is going to be central to that. So Black music and Black cultural politics, I would argue that Black music offers sonic anchors for community building. So you think about building a community around sound, around movement, around rhythm, around step shows, if you've seen those, around this beautiful performance that we saw at the beginning, where we had a drum and we had a voice and we had the rhythm of the voice, and it was creating a reality. We didn't even need this for that. So there's a way that sonic anchors of sound are created in community building from the point of view of people who are engaged in multiple forms of Black activism. This is something that transcends everything we do. It gives voice and meaning to lived Black experience. Where do you find meaning in your life? You hear it, you feel it. Someone hugs you, someone whispers in your ear, someone sings to you, someone hums when you're a baby, someone tickles you when you laugh and you hear it. It is sound. All of that is human. And I'm arguing that is not just stuff to help you deal with oppression. That is something that's fundamental to sustaining a broader Black freedom struggle, especially during periods of time when visible political activism and protests are suppressed. In other words, Black cultural politics are become more important during times of repression. They're always important, but more so now, more than ever. So music. Black music, I would argue, encapsulates the sound and feel of an era that reflect and shape lived Black experiences. There will be a sound of an era that goes with politics. There will be a sound of an era that goes with institutional politics of repression. There will be a sound, a Black musical sound, or a sonic environment that tells us about that era. Now, Black musical genres reflect cultural survival, protest, and institutional politics of their time. You still with me? I'm doing a lot with these slides, by the way. I'm sure you're noticing this. You're probably going, what is she talking about now? Okay, well, I think I'm keeping up, but I'm not sure. Okay, there'll be time for questions. When you think about Black music, not Black music as it's been appropriated by dominant culture and turned into entertainment. I'm not looking at that. I'm thinking about culture, music, as it is created and performed by Black people who are dealing with particular existential questions of racism, of struggle, of poverty. And there are different forms, genres of Black music that go with different periods of time. For example, nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Nobody knows my sorrow. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Glory, hallelujah. That's a spiritual that comes from somewhere deep inside where you can't sing anything else but that. And that's profoundly political and keeping people going. You still with me? I wasn't planning on singing, but I just felt it. I felt doing it. Okay. All right. Blues take us somewhere else. They take us into the south of the U.S. where someone's singing, oh, my baby done left me. My baby done left me. She left me. I hope she comes back. I mean, it's a way to get stuff out. Have you seen the movie Sinners? Has it made it here yet? Oh, yeah. Okay, go see that. And you will see all of these genres in one film. All right? Anyhow, we got R&B soul. I'm sure some of you know about R&B. You got your little snip snaps going. Yeah, honey, I got my funk on. Yeah, I got some of you smooth jazz. But my point is that these genres of Black music emerge in particular political and social and cultural situations. They emerge during particular periods of time. And what they do, I would argue, is they provide a sonic environment for everything that is going on in that time with Black people, especially if it's under a situation of segregation. I should mention this. This is crucial for the United States, racial segregation. So, third point up there, music is portable. You can take my book away from me. You can pile up books in front of a library and burn them. You can forbid me to have them in my house, Fahrenheit 451, is it? The movie, they burn stuff. But it is very difficult to tamp down the sound, voice, ideas of a human being. Because sound travels far more freely than actual Black people. Because have to recognize that part of how systems of oppression have worked is to limit your movement. You cannot go here. You cannot go there. You must have a pass if you're going here or there. The limitation on poor Black kids, working class Black kids in cities by the police is all about limiting their movement in public space. So the bodies can be regulated, but the voice and the sound and the whisper and the music and the how I feel inside cannot be regulated like that because you don't control that. Culture, 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 the beats. the beat, the beat, the beat. Feel your own heartbeat. So what happens here is music finds a way to connect mind, body, and soul in ways that move people. Moving, dance. Dance enters into this. Babies dance, people dance. You can sing and dance on the way on the metro, whatever it is. Because it's the moving that matters. So I'm getting into now some core ideas that I think underlie this whole notion of a soundscape. And I better pick up the pace, or we'll all be here till Saturday. So let me hurry up. So let me move on to part 2. Look at that. That was my segue. Soundscapes of Black activism. A soundscape, or a Black soundscape, as I'm going to use it in my work, unless you tell me no, is a sonic environment that grounds Black political activism. A soundscape, a Black soundscape, is a sonic environment that grounds Black political activism. It's the sound of a movement. It's the sound of a period of time. It reflects the political challenges of an era. For example, slavery had its own genres of Black music, had its own soundscape. Segregation, racial segregation, was that. Desegregation, and I'll talk about this in a few minutes, colorblind racism. Because what we're doing is we're inching closer to contemporary situations by looking at the soundscapes or listening to the soundscapes of what came before us to foreshadow. I'm going to argue that colorblind racism creates the soundscape of hip-hop. It's what I want to look at. Or hopefully we'll get there. But to finish this point, music expresses individual and or collective meaning. Here we have on the left Aretha Franklin. Notice how I got us from slavery to the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement in 5 minutes. Can we do it, people? We can do it, all right? Here's Aretha Franklin saying, I never loved a man the way I loved you. Now, she's technically singing about her love relationships, but she's also singing respect, which became an anthem. She did this in 1967 at a really important period in Black political activism. Let me get to the next slide on this one. Mid-20th century Black social movements. I'm leading up to this soundscape of this period. I'm laying a foundation of this soundscape so I can get to the soundscape of hip-hop and to ask, what's going on now? That's where we're going, just so you know. Are you all right out there, by the way? How you doing? I need to check in. How is everyone doing? Is everyone still awake? Okay. Is anyone asleep next to you? If not, you should wake them up so they will not embarrass themselves by snoring in a lecture, and then I won't have to cry up here and feel so bad. How about that gentleman in that red hat? Chapéu vermelho? Oh, it is seriously vermelho. Can you see my man, my brother back there? That's you. You know it's somebody got a red hat in here. Oh, a couple of people have red hats. Okay, never mind. I'm moving on with my lecture, if you don't mind. Can we continue? Sim. Okay. I've gotten you from slavery through musical genres through the long arc of Black freedom struggle, starting off with slavery in 2 countries. Look how much distance we have traveled in a short amount of time. I've gotten you all the way to 1945 to 1970 to today. And we're looking at the soundscapes that preceded this one. And I'm looking at on the left, the civil rights movement, 1945 to 1968, that had its own soundscape of freedom songs. Because we live in a period of time now where these songs can be collated, shared, put on video. We can see much more of what people were doing and saying and thinking because we have the technology to archive that didn't exist in the past. Before, a lot of this was memory activism, songs that were passed down. It's simultaneously cultural and political. Sound informs the meaning of protest, institutional survival, and cultural politics. And on the right, we've got the Black Power movement, 1967 to the 70s, which also has its own soundtrack, the Black Power mixtape that I pulled off from somewhere, I believe. And what I'm going to argue there is that during this period of time, after the war, major civil rights movement in the U.S. that most people are familiar with, that's Martin Luther King. I have a dream. And then we get to 1967, and it begins to shift a little bit because the dream seems to be coming true. Laws are passed. Things are a little different. Civil rights is on the books or getting there. And yet things do not seem to be dramatically changing. So we get a Black Power movement that says exactly that. Maybe this push for civil rights, this push for a society that is colorblind, isn't going to be enough. So what happens is we get more radical work during that Black Power movement. This is a very significant shift because this is the period that precedes now. This is the period of political activism that had a shifting sonic soundscape along with it, that moved from freedom songs to radical music in some ways. Now, you still there? Let me see if I can keep going, because, I'm kind of tired, so I need to be inspired. I need you to inspire me. Look inspiring. Let me see if anybody's looking inspiring over here. Oh, that's very good, sir. I'm inspired. I see teeth. All right. What did I do? Did I turn it off? Oh, okay. And this I'm not going to spend much time on, but this is just to give you a sense of the work that I'm doing to kind of develop this argument. I'm not just blowing smoke with this argument. I'm really trying to spend time thinking about how music and sound and politics work together. And we've got three artists here that I think are very different from this particular period of time. Aretha Franklin, who I've just mentioned, Nina Simone, who I started with, and Marvin Gaye, whose classic album, What's Going On, really begins to tap the sound of the era and how it's changing. From those songs of Aretha Franklin, it says, respect, find out you better respect me, that kind of thing, to what's going on, war, poverty, whatever. So we've got all three artists came of age during a visible period of Black freedom struggle. They all saw social protest. That's important. But not everybody comes of age during a period when there's social protest. Remember that earlier model. So where are we now? 1968, I argue, we have a convergence of the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement where they begin to shift dramatically. And all of them draw upon multiple Black musical genres. And you can see in their music of these artists the shifts. So this is a way of beginning to think about artists, not just as performing in any one particular musical genre, but of drawing from many. So soundscapes of Black activism over time. Historical trajectory of African American music, I'm summing up here before I move on, reflect phases of Black freedom struggle, music within the broader framework of Black cultural politics, and soundscapes mark periods of time. The civil rights and Black Power movement, which I've just talked about really briefly, which I think you're pretty familiar, most people are familiar with. And then we get to hip hop. Hip hop sits on all of this. It sits on the ancient music. It sits on the ancient sounds. It sits on all of that history. It sits on that freedom struggle. It didn't just appear from nowhere. So how do we make sense of this? Well, I found an album that I think occurred during the period of time where you see a transition from Black Power, from civil rights, the beginning of hip hop. And this one is called The Last Poets. Have you ever heard of The Last Poets? Any of you familiar with them? Well, this is from 1970, and their particular album didn't fit anywhere comfortably in the freedom songs. It didn't fit anywhere comfortably in the sort of the angry Black nationalist songs from Black Power. We're going to get you. That didn't fit. This is a group of men who are performing on the street. Now, here's how I came to the Last Poets. And this is how I think people come to a lot of things. I was teaching middle school at the time. Yes, I am old. I was teaching 12 and 13-year-old kids. And I was teaching in a community school, Black community school, where we were trying all kinds of things to help our students learn. And the things that most schools were concerned about, I was not concerned about. I didn't care whether the kids chewed gum in class. I don't care. If you want to wear a hat in class, keep the hat on your head. What I care about is that you learn and you're not interrupting anyone else's learning. And I said to the kids, bring things into the school that you want to listen to and read. And this is what they brought. Now, I'd never heard of the Last Poets. These were the early adopters of what I've come to see as very much a hip-hop ethos. These were the kids they knew what was happening on the street. Now, these poets were pretty raw in terms of the language they were using, but they were pretty political about what they were saying. So you notice we had a drum. Here's the drum on their album cover. We had a drum right up here on the stage. We heard a piece of spoken word poetry. That's what they're doing out on the street, even before all this stuff happens in New York. They're wearing African garb to signal the connections between the past and the present. And yet they're actually out on the street that is urban. You can see the trash behind them. And they're saying, we are poets in the streets. And we are saying things that need to be said. And I think that they are anticipating, signaling, drawing upon a period of time, looking backwards, looking forwards to what is where we are now. So over here, if I pulled out Black cultural politics in transition, the break in the beat, I'm going to come back to that at another talk, but music, spoken word poetry, no one's dancing there. But when we think about where dance began as part of hip-hop, it was on the street. So a lot happens on the street. They're not in the studio. They're not marching. Public art, they're in public, and rap and DJing. So I think a lot of the precursors are already there if we begin to look. Now, how you doing out there? Because I know this is a lot of talk. We doing okay? Oh, you really doing okay? Really? See? Yeah. We'll say to the band. Okay. Really? Really to the band? Okay. Say. All right. Okay. You said so. Let's move on. Final part. Now I want to talk a little bit about hip-hop and Black cultural politics and the possibilities for how to think about the politics of what's going on that are not just investigating the political philosophy of an artist or what an artist is doing in his or her work or their work, but is really looking at hip-hop in the context of the long arc of Black freedom struggle. That's looking at hip-hop in the context of multiple forms of Black activism, protest, institutional, survival, cultural. It's not just cultural, but to look at hip-hop in terms of that and how that's working, and to ask, what is hip-hop doing that is creating a sonic environment, a sonic soundscape, a Black soundscape for what we see around us? Do you see the challenge of what I'm trying to do? You still with me? This is hard. I'm bringing something to you that is hard. I'm not just here, so-and-so was real good, let's bounce to the beat, here's what he meant. That's not what I'm doing. We need to do that, but that's not what I'm doing. So what I'm going to do is think that we are in a moment now where many people are looking at hip-hop in terms of what does it mean? 50 years of hip-hop. It's a lot of time. It's 2 generations of people who have come of age to adulthood during a period of time when things are different And how are they different? And what are we getting in Black cultural politics? So how, my question, does hip-hop reflect and inform Black activism? And my graphics here, I'm going to hit the end of this talk, just 3 places that I think it does make a difference, all right? Contradictory politics. Here's the contradiction of today. On the one hand, we have, ever since 1970 with the last poets, or certainly early hip-hop, we have an unapologetic Blackness. I think this is very much a through theme that I see in hip-hop by Black artists, because hip-hop isn't just Black, but hip-hop by Black artists. They're unapologetically Black. Even the whole thing of being in your face on a music video, leaning into the camera, being seen, being loud, being vocal, saying you want to look, you can look, being bold. That's an unapologetic Blackness that's very different than the Blackness of civil rights, which was to dress up in a suit and go on the march and ask to be let in. That is not a Barack Obama Blackness, all right? So this is an unapologetic Blackness that by 2018 you can see in a very interesting book by a young Black woman called Unapologetic, which is why I put it up here, because I think it really speaks to what happened by the time she wrote this book. A lot of people were unapologetic about a lot of things. A Black, queer, and feminist mandate for radical movements. Who would have thought that would have come out of the hip-hop generation if it was just all about something else? But on the other hand, we have a book that is really important as well, called Racism Without Racists. Because up until the end of the Black Power movement and the Civil Rights movement, there was the assumption that racism was going to be visible and you could find it in racist people. But if we stop talking about race, then racism goes away. What does that mean? Well, Black people can't be Black, because if they're Black, then somehow that brings race into the room. And therefore, we're dealing with racism. Doesn't make sense. But anyhow, this notion of colorblind racism, here's the puzzle. Now, by the way, I should point out that I think Brazil is a very interesting case of this in terms of racial democracy from the 30s on, where apparently there were no Black people in the census. So if there are no Black people in the census, then therefore there are no Black people, and therefore there is no Black, then there's no peace. Does that make sense to you? But that does tend to be the logic here. If we don't see Black, then we don't see the things that happen to Black people because they're Black people. Well, this is kind of like fascinating, but that's what it is. But Eduardo Bonilla Silva writes a book, Racism Without Racists, and spends his time thinking about that kind of system in the U.S. Because in many ways, this is the logic of the civil rights movement. Now, the puzzle. Hip-hop's unapologetic Blackness emerges during a time when being Black shouldn't matter. Why would you get unapologetic Blackness if Martin Luther King's vision, as it has been repackaged in the U.S., is working? What all do you people want? We have laws against, discrimination against Black people. So why are you complaining? So there we go, the puzzle. How do we figure that out? Well, there are a lot of answers to that. I'm sure many people here know the answers to that. Because the unevenness of how those rights were distributed is clear. Something like 2012 to 2020, the police violence against young Black men in the U.S., from Trayvon Martin all the way to George Floyd, and Black women in between, said to people who were coming of age or who were of age at that point, racism without racists, nah. This colorblind racism is simply not working as a theory in terms of what we should do. So, a contradictory politics. How do you actually, if you're young and you're Black, and this is happening to you, cultural politics become central to your political expression. You can't vote often. If you could, maybe you have a prison record, felony, so they won't allow you to vote. You cannot participate in institutional politics the way you might want to. Protest is difficult because what are you protesting? Survival is hidden. So I think a major form of political activism for young Black people is, in fact, cultural politics. And to look to the cultural politics that come from young Black people and 2 generations of young Black people under hip-hop is the way we need to think about looking differently at politics itself and Black activism itself. So, unapologetic Blackness. I can't hit my little button for sound, so we're just not going to deal with that. But unapologetic Blackness, you see the synergy of music and film. I'm picking 3 moments to look at. 1 historic and then 2 contemporary. Public Enemy. This would be kind of a Mano Brown, Russian ISMC. Your version of this? All right, so I don't really have to go into this. But what's interesting about this for me is Public Enemy, Fear of a Black Planet, Public Enemy's Fight the Power, which was an anthem, was pointed out to me by my students in Black Studies. This was years later. Now I'm teaching adults. But what's interesting is that it's connected to the film, Do the Right Thing. So this is the beginning of an era where it's not just sound. It's sound and visuals. It's young Black people starting to make music and films and dance and culture, really beginning to claim the cultural landscape at a time when technology allows that to happen in ways that haven't happened before. So it's a way to communicate that had been shut down because we didn't have the skills to talk to each other, spread out in many different places. So to me, this example shows the synergy of music and film. It shows sound and image of urban communities, which can now be seen. But it also means you get the voice of Black masculinity in ways that are a bit problematic. I rewatched this movie, Do the Right Thing, and I thought it was really interesting, Spike Lee stuff. But he's not the only filmmaker out there. But I put this up here because he uses the soundtrack of Public Enemy. So we begin to see the use of the soundtrack. Stop! You get the point. I really didn't think that was going to happen because I thought I was running out of time, but you hear the feel. You hear the sound of it. All right. Ooh, that was really scared me. That was a great system, too. All right. Sorry, people. Let me get back on track because we have 2 more slides, and I would really like to finish this talk. All right. There were many of you were saying, I really wish you would finish this talk, too. But I think we're in a really interesting period of time now around how Black artists have managed to harness the power of mass media spectacle. Moving from music to music and film, to music, film, and dance, to music, film, dance, and poetry, to commanding global audiences. And I think we have to begin to ask, what's the political stuff in there? Now, I pull up Beyonce. I'm assuming everyone has heard of Beyonce. Because if I've heard of Beyonce, all of you have heard of Beyonce. I'm last to the party very often. I'm an intellectual. I'm reading books. I'm not out in the club with you all doing whatever you're doing, getting down. I'm just going, okay, let me keep reading, kind of thing. But anyhow, I did take a risk in 2005 because I was really interested in, I was writing a book called Black Sexual Politics at the time. And what fascinated me was Survivor, the album Survivor by Destiny's Child, and Beyonce. This is an early thing. Now, what was happening during that time when this came out was all the Black women were singing the song Survivor. I'm Survivor, I'm going to make it. You go home. It was the anthem of how you struggle during times of strength and all this. But on this album, there was this one song that just didn't seem to fit the sound of the era. I said, what is this? It's a song called Bootylicious, right? So I decided to take that song, Bootylicious. It was really interesting. It was like, can you handle it? That's the song, Bootylicious. I'm Bootylicious. Can you handle it? Kind of thing. And I thought, okay, Beyonce, you getting Destiny's Child, go on out there, see what happens with that. But it seems like this was a moment of Beyonce and Destiny's Child, but Beyonce has since gone on to become the major figure here, that they were claiming a body, an unapologetic blackness that is also female, an unapologetic black feminism that you see in Cardi B, you see in Megan Thee Stallion, you see in people that we're pretty not familiar with now. But they're doing this way back in the day with Bootylicious. So I put an argument about the booty in my book, if you want to read it. I feel it's held up the test of time. Because when I wrote this, I thought, oh, this could go really wrong in terms of how people see this song now. But what's interesting to me about Beyonce's career is how consistently she has commanded public space to say things that are basically black and about black people, but not necessarily confrontational, but maybe they really are without us recognizing that. We've got Lemonade down here, which is a video where she's reclaiming black women's history. We've got on the right, Formation. This is when she appears in the Super Bowl. Are you familiar with what the Super Bowl is? I'm going to show something in the final slide about that. This is the pageantry of America on stage on steroids. The football game of the year and the halftime show of the year. So Beyonce got out there with a lot of people and a lot of hair and sort of invokes the Panthers in some really interesting ways. The setting is where this happens, because this is at the heart of American nationalism. This is an American nationalist pageant. Right now, the controversy is on about Bad Bunny. We'll see how that goes. All right. But but here, her film Homecoming really is, she's just become a filmmaker. She finds a way to command the press, command the media. And the messages are not about, black women are just sexy, black women are this, that, and the other. It's a continuation, for me, of that earlier spirit of Bootylicious. All right. Now, I just thought I'd put that out there. But that's current, to look for this. But the mass media spectacle I really want to finish with is unapologetic blackness and mass media spectacle. And this is the notion of a mass media spectacle within the mass media spectacle of American nationalism. And so I want that to sink in. This is the spectacle of Kendrick Lamar's halftime show. This year, whenever this was, January 2025, where he commands the entire show. What you see on the right is the American flag. This is Kendrick Lamar in the middle. You see the American flag that is built on the backs of black people. The visual here is fascinating. You have all these people, the red, white, and blue of the flag, moving, the movement, the sound, the spoken word, the spectacle, the whole thing. It is a masterful work of black cultural politics. And in the middle, you have Samuel J. Jackson as Uncle Sam. Now, bear with me. This might accidentally play when I'm trying not to have it play. But we actually have a little clip of Samuel Jackson as Uncle Sam. And what's happening here is Lamar is not mocking America. He's really calling America to task in the middle of the ceremony that is fundamentally about American nationalism. And he's doing it in a way that is completely unapologetic. So to me, we have a moment that is really interesting, a political moment that's happening. Okay, let me see if I can get past it.
It's your uncle, Sam. And this is the great American game. Ooh, too loud, too reckless, too ghetto. Mr. Lamar, do you really know how to play the game? Sit tight. See your Bucker homeboys with your culture cheat code. Scorekeeper, deduct 1 life.
Okay. You get the feel. Uncle Sam is walking through there saying to Kendrick, you can't do this. Have you lost your mind? What are you doing? This is going to get you killed. This is anti-American. And yet that show went on, and it was incredibly controversial. So we've traveled quite some distance for what will it take for Black people to be free. From where I started this presentation in the long arc of Black freedom struggle to finishing up in November 2025, looking at a video of Kendrick Lamar at Super Bowl saying something about that history and commanding a global audience while doing it. Now, if you want to convince me that that is not the long arc of Black freedom struggle, we can chat. But I don't think you're going to convince me. And this is why, when I look at what is going on now, and there's some things that are very distressing going on, I say, you know what? This is the question. What will it take for Black people to be free? And the issue is to keep the beat, the rhythm, the beat, the tone, the movement, the Black soundscape moving on. There is no loss. There is only freedom to be gained. Thank you.
Boa noite. O que falar depois dessa palestra? I'm speechless. Thank you. Ela acabou de me dizer que ela não gostaria de ser eu. Bem, gente, boa noite. Eu quero começar agradecendo ao Mecila, ao Sesc, o convite para estar aqui. É sempre uma honra poder dialogar com a Patrícia. Não é a primeira vez que eu sou convidada para um lugar de tamanha importância, que é dialogar com uma pessoa que tem, além de uma professora maravilhosa, um senso de humor incrível. Mas, Patrícia, você mexeu muito com a gente hoje. Você mexeu profundamente com muitas convicções, com muitas crenças que talvez a gente tenha em relação... Acho que você recolocou para a gente, né, o lugar da música e da relação da música com o ativismo. Né? Eu vejo essa sua reflexão numa perspectiva muito também metodológica de análise, né? Que eu acho que eu nunca vi nada igual o que você faz de percurso em termos da música, das décadas, dos períodos, das transformações, e como você conecta isso com o ativismo e com essa pergunta tão difícil de responder, que eu acho que todos nós vamos sempre refletir sobre, né, o que precisamos fazer para a população negra ser livre, né? E acho que essa interrogação, ela nos, como você trouxe, ela nos persegue há muitos anos, né? E é impossível não pensar nessa, como resposta a essa questão, a palavra resistência, né? O struggle for freedom que você fala, né? E também é impossível não voltar para a realidade brasileira e pensar como que a gente tem sobrevivido no Brasil, né? E você cita os Racionais né? E eu acho que o Sobrevivendo no Inferno nos traz justamente para essa reflexão, né? Ou seja, estamos diante de um enorme desafio de sobrevivência no Brasil hoje, né? A letalidade dos nossos jovens negros é algo avassalador, né? O Brasil tem chacinas como método, né? Como estratégia e como estratégia política, né? Então, eu não consegui, né, o tempo todo que eu vi você falar, eu pensava nos nossos jovens negros moradores das favelas, das comunidades do Brasil, né? Que ouvem essas músicas e que têm na música uma forma de expressão, de lazer, né? A gente pega os saraus literários que temos muito no Brasil, a gente tem diversas formas de manifestação, né, musical que também reflete, né? Eu estou tentando fazer um paralelo aqui, mas está difícil. Mas eu acho que a gente, mais recentemente, talvez, a gente consiga, a partir... Eu acho que aí a Jaqueline vai me salvar, porque o hip-hop ele é uma marca muito importante dessa transformação geracional. Porque eu fiquei o tempo todo, enquanto você falava, pensando na questão geracional, né? Como que as pessoas mais velhas podem... a escuta dos mais velhos em relação ao que você trouxe hoje e a escuta dos jovens. Eu tenho certeza que para a geração mais jovem que está nessa plateia, né, o que você traz nessa parte final da tua apresentação é o que a gente constrói bastante essa identidade. No Brasil, hoje, a gente tem grandes figuras da música, do rap, sendo presas, né, sendo perseguidas politicamente também. A gente tem enfrentado no Brasil um momento muito duro, mesmo para esses jovens que estão que vêm da favela, que estão enriquecendo com as suas músicas, que estão ganhando esse espaço. Eles não deixam de ser um jovem negro, eles não deixam de estar na mira da bala, né? Quando eu comecei a estudar as políticas de ações afirmativas no Brasil, eu fiz uma fala em que eu disse isso. As ações afirmativas tiram os jovens negros da mira da bala. E quando eu falei isso num evento, né, eu ouvi a seguinte resposta de um rapper brasileiro: não tira da mira, não, mas tira do alcance, né? Ou seja, a mira continua, mas ele está mais distante desse tiro, né? Então, no Brasil, o investimento educacional na juventude negra é algo que tem menos de 20 anos. A lei que garante aos negros no Brasil um espaço nas universidades tem 13 anos, né? Então, Patrícia, eu acho que o que você traz para a gente com essa apresentação maravilhosa, na qual eu vou pensar por muito, muito tempo, é como olhar para o Brasil e reorganizar o nosso olhar sobre a música negra brasileira a partir do que você nos trouxe hoje. Eu acho que esse é o grande presente da sua fala. Eu acho que nós temos muitas proximidades, mas, ao mesmo tempo, muitas diferenças em termos da cultura racial brasileira e americana, mas hoje você nos deu um caminho para repensar o papel da música negra no Brasil, de recolocar, né, essa música, na nossa música, dentro desse desafio que você trouxe. E, para mim, foi inevitável pensar também que, nos anos 90, no Brasil, né, onde a gente já tem o hip-hop crescendo, hoje a gente já tem essa manifestação cultural, a gente tinha o que a gente chama do pagode. Se virem aí, tradutores, mas é um tipo de música negra, mas que fala do amor, que fala da namorada que foi embora, que fala de alguém que você perdeu. E, na época, tinha uma certa disputa de uma música que alienava pela lógica do amor, do afeto, do sexo, e a música da política, né? E, na verdade, o que você traz aqui para a gente hoje é que não, essa música negra do pagode, da alegria, do amor e do afeto, ele também é revolucionário. Ele também tem um espaço de transformação. E eu me lembro muito do livro de Bell Hooks, dialogando com Cornel Wells, que em algum momento do livro ele fala: nós precisamos resgatar o amor. A gente é de uma geração que a gente lutava, mas a gente chegava no final do dia, botava um disquinho, botava uma música boa e dançava, e tinha essa perspectiva do afeto, né? E eu gosto dessa ideia de que a gente também pode, nessas músicas, nessas diferentes performances musicais, a gente conseguir recuperar algo que a gente tem perdido muito no ativismo. E quando você fala da música, a música, pelo menos para mim, ela sempre vai ser uma forma de afeto. Ela sempre vai ser uma forma de você ouvir uma música com alguém, você dançar com alguém, né? É sempre um movimento de partilha. E eu acho que você falou isso muito, muito bonito quando você começa a falar dessas diferentes gerações de músicas negras nos Estados Unidos, o seu papel no ativismo, o seu papel na resistência, né? É que a música torna, né, o som, o beat, ele cria esse uníssono, né? Então, quando você está num lugar, num espaço, e todos cantam juntos a mesma música, a mesma letra, você também está criando um espírito de comunidade, um espírito de partilha, né? E eu acho que a coisa mais bela que nós aprendemos com você hoje é que a música vai muito além, né? Sabemos disso, mas nunca foi dito dessa forma, Patrícia. Eu estou profundamente emocionada com a sua fala, porque ela me fez repensar muitas das nossas estratégias. Nós que somos professores, estamos na universidade, recebendo os alunos, né? Hoje, nas universidades públicas, temos um público mais diverso em termos de formação, e eu acho que essa batida, Keeping the Beat, é a forma da gente criar algo que é uníssono, algo que a gente partilha, né? E que a gente faz reverberar de muitas formas, né? Acho que o que você traz para a gente é mais do que a sua leitura a partir da pesquisa que você fez, né? Mas como estudar ativismo, música e transformação social. Muito, muito obrigada pela sua fala, porque realmente eu acho que saímos aqui todos um pouco mais, talvez, não sei, não mais leves, mas mais esperançosos, né? E viva a música, e viva a Patrícia. Obrigada.
Boa noite a todas as pessoas. Também quero agradecer ao Mecila, ao SEBRAP, ao Sesc por esse convite e a professora Patrícia por compartilhar tanto com a gente, sempre, né? Eu costumo falar que cada vinda da professora Patrícia ao Brasil é uma fala diferente, né? E se ela for fazer 5, 6, 7 falas na mesma vinda, são 5, 6, 7 falas diferentes, né? Ela sempre compartilha muito e também valoriza muito da nossa experiência, tentando conectar aquilo que ela traz com aquilo que a gente está vivendo aqui, né? Uma intelectual dessa nossa diáspora negra que busca conhecer um pouco do que a gente é. E o Brasil é praticamente a segunda casa, né, professora? Porque ela tem vindo ao Brasil constantemente, viajado por diferentes territórios, visitado diferentes territórios, e ela já falou, já adiantou aqui para mim que ela quer vir ao Brasil 2 vezes ao ano. Então, se organizem aí nas suas instituições para fazer um bom programa de convite para a professora Patrícia. Bom, não sei se vai dar tempo de eu falar tudo que eu anotei aqui, né? São muitas questões, mas vamos lá. Professora Patrícia, nessa sua apresentação, compartilhamento, hoje, né, a senhora coloca as políticas culturais como centrais para as nossas formas de expressão, né? Porque, por meio das políticas culturais, circulam ideias, conhecimentos, e essas políticas culturais negras que a senhora aborda, elas falam sobre o dia a dia, né? E constrói uma perspectiva de vida, como foi colocado, guide actions, além de, nas suas palavras, conectar mente, corpo e alma em caminhos que engajam pessoas. E isso faz a gente refletir muito sobre as expressões culturais negras no Brasil, que sempre foram um caminho de arregimentação política também. E foi por meio das expressões culturais negras que muitas pessoas negras, sem acesso à informação sobre a sua história, sobre a sua memória, conseguiram construir uma ponte, né, passado, presente, e construir novas perspectivas de futuro. Quando a gente olha, por meio do Fight the Power, com um olhar crítico sobre a nossa história, a história que não é contada, e quando a gente reconhece essa história que não é contada, a gente consegue entender a nossa vida no presente e, a partir disso, projetar perspectivas futuras. E as expressões culturais negras, elas contribuíram muito com isso, né, além da atuação dos movimentos sociais, e contribuíram a partir de uma outra forma de linguagem. No livro, que é uma das mais recentes traduções para o português das suas produções, que é do Black Power ao Hip Hop, Racismo, Nacionalismo e Feminismo, a senhora oferece uma estrutura bem robusta e consistente, eu diria, para a gente analisar como que as experiências e as lutas negras, elas são ouvidas ou silenciadas e articuladas, né, em diferentes momentos históricos e sociais. E, a partir dali, né, a gente já tem essa visão que a senhora traz de que essa cultura ela desempenha um papel central na construção da identidade negra, na resistência às formas de opressão e na articulação de um mundo pluriverso, ou de visões de mundo alternativas, a gente poderia dizer. Então, ali a senhora já está trabalhando a cultura como um elemento que serve como um repositório de memória, né, e um espaço para reafirmação da dignidade. E aqui, né, a senhora provoca a gente a pensar políticas culturais negras como um caminho de enfrentamento, né? Nos leva a pensar os meios como as culturas elas possibilitam a gente organizar a nossa criatividade, mas ela também vai constituir comunidades negras e sustentar essa solidariedade negra. E esse espaço que a gente está aqui hoje, essa região, esse território, a gente pode dizer que ele foi ocupado historicamente pela população negra devido às políticas culturais negras, né? Esse conceito de políticas culturais negras que a senhora traz aqui. Porque essa rua aqui, 24 de Maio, a gente pode dizer que foi um espaço de arregimentação política negra por meio da cultura, da música, né? A narrativa do cotidiano, ela estava presente aqui. As raízes do hip hop também estão aqui, né? E que começa com uma narrativa sobre uma diversão compartilhada, né? Mas é sempre uma narrativa sobre a experiência compartilhada. Mas ocupar o centro da cidade também tinha formas de fazer com que essa população negra tivesse que resistir e fazer alguns enfrentamentos, né? Aqui também foi um espaço onde teve muita violência policial contra essa população negra que ocupava esse espaço, que vinha buscar informação, porque essa região, essa rua onde tem as galerias onde circulavam discos, revistas, vídeos, livros sobre a luta negra a nível internacional, e as pessoas também se encontravam e discutiam ideias sobre a experiência negra no Brasil, né? Então, tinha a gente tem essa narrativa do cotidiano sobre a diversão, a experiência compartilhada, mas também depois vem sobre as questões, essa experiência compartilhada com racismo no território, né? E aqui, nessa rua, circularam muitos materiais que a senhora mostrou, como o Fear of Black Planet, do... gente... o do The White Thing. Inclusive, naquele período, os cinemas de São Paulo se recusavam a passar filmes de cineastas negros. Falavam que não ia ter público, e etc. E a juventude negra que se organizava nessa região, em colaboração com uma organização de mulheres negras, na aproximação com o feminismo negro, começou, essa organização tinha estrutura, tinha financiamento internacional, conseguiu alugar salas de cinema aqui da região central e passar os filmes do Spike Lee, por exemplo. E só foi depois disso que as salas comerciais de cinema começaram a passar esses filmes, porque eles não passavam. Então, foi um espaço de arregimentação cultural, mas de luta política e de resistência. Então, a música, como a senhora disse, ela informa o significado dessas políticas de protestos institucionais e de sobrevivência cultural. E estou falando desse espaço porque, assim como a música afro-estadunidense, que a senhora traz ali diferentes experiências ao longo do período histórico, reflete as fases de luta pela libertação da população negra, isso também ocorre no Brasil, com as expressões culturais negras, né? A gente pode dizer que a música, a poesia falada, os slams, os ritmos percussivos, outras manifestações vocais também, elas foram primordiais para o ativismo negro. E elas não são só entretenimento, são também, mas elas se colocaram como veículos de mensagem política, coesão comunitária e expressão de subjetividade. Bom, eu vou tentar pular aqui, porque eu acho que já deu quase 10 minutos da minha fala, né? Quando a gente olha por essa lente, né, da paisagem sonora que a senhora traz, a gente compreende que esse som ele não é meramente um pano de fundo, mas é um território de disputa, de memória e de projeção de futuro, né? Então, quando a gente ouve atentamente as vozes, os silêncios e os ritmos desse ativismo negro sobre a sua ótica mesmo, é importante a gente pensar sobre as complexidades de uma matriz de dominação, que a senhora trabalha lá também, do Black Power e Hip Hop, para que a gente possa reconhecer esses conhecimentos da produção cultural negra como, poderia dizer, em termos acadêmicos, epistemologias alternativas que vão impulsionar a busca por uma sociedade mais justa, né? E a gente tem paisagens sonoras dominantes, né, que podem marginalizar ou cooptar as vozes do ativismo negro, mas a gente tem essas epistemologias alternativas, que pode ser a música gospel, o blues, o jazz, o hip hop, o funk, o samba, os cantos de protesto. E essas são fontes válidas de conhecimento e resistência, né? A gente entende aqui que essas são sonoridades onde a verdade da experiência negra, ou as verdades da experiência negra, elas são expressas e validadas, e muitas vezes em contraste com narrativas hegemônicas. E aí, pensando tudo isso sobre as políticas culturais negras, as expressões culturais negras, e pensando em como o movimento negro organiza a sua narrativa, né, a gente teve um processo de construção de caminhos para a inclusão da população negra no Brasil, que foi um processo de inclusão nesse modelo de sociedade. Então, a gente olha para a universidade como e a gente fala, na universidade não tem pessoas negras. A gente olha para os espaços de poder e fala, nesses espaços de poder não tem pessoas negras. E a gente siga um caminho de inclusão das pessoas negras nesse modelo de sociedade. Mas a política cultural, ela traz o protesto sobre essa exclusão, sobre o racismo, mas ela também traz uma outra forma de existir, né? Porque ela está falando sobre o nosso corpo, sobre a nossa estética, sobre a nossa forma de expressão. E hoje, um dos grandes conflitos que a gente tem no nosso modelo de sociedade é que a gente reivindicou a integração nesse modelo de sociedade a partir do debate de desigualdades, mas a questão do nosso projeto civilizatório ou das africanidades, eles ficaram como temas e não como forma de vida. Então, muitas vezes, essas políticas chegam de inclusão em determinados territórios, mas não dão conta de incluir a completude das pessoas desse território, porque não tem a questão cultural, a questão da africanidade, que a questão cultural tem a ver com o nosso projeto de sociedade. Então, avaliando a cultura, o som, né, como território de disputa, memória e projeto de futuro, como que a senhora interpreta, por exemplo, o policiamento e a marginalização das expressões culturais negras, das manifestações sonoras negras, como tem ocorrido no Brasil com funk, né? Mas já ocorreu com samba, com candomblé, com hip-hop. Como que a senhora avalia, né, esse policiamento e marginalização dessas expressões culturais negras que tem a ver com o projeto civilizatório, tem a ver com forma de existir, nas paisagens urbanas, sejam brasileiras, dos Estados Unidos e globais, né? De que forma a negação dessas expressões se insere na matriz de dominação que a senhora trabalha, né? E como essas expressões elas funcionam como ferramenta de subversão sonora? Acho que é uma pergunta que a senhora já trouxe algumas pistas ali na sua apresentação, mas foi o que eu pensei a partir da sua apresentação. Tá?
You know, I don't really know where to go with all this. Oh, wait a minute, whoa. I don't need to listen to the Portuguese. I'll distract myself. I'm not arguing. I'm basically saying we just need a shift and how to begin thinking about how we're looking at the worlds that we're in. And the shift that I'm aiming for is so much of how we think about the world is bouncing off of what the world tells us it is, as opposed to saying, this is not where I want to go with this. Wait a minute. Let me back up. I'm going to roll that back. Think about that for a minute. I may want to follow that, but I may not want to follow that. I wouldn't put so much, I'm putting emphasis on music because music has been so central to Black culture. I could have made a case also about oral culture, about talking, about speeches, about sermons, about all of that, and that would have been a spoken word poetry version of it. I could have done a movement version of it. The point of culture isn't that it necessarily has to be political as we historically have understood it, but that it does different things for different people. The culture is consumed by people. It's used by people. It's shared by people. It's received by people. What are we giving to people that will help them survive, thrive, resist, and move toward freedom? So that a song can be totally just whatever. It can be just plain old vanilla song. But if what it does is it helps that person get through the day because that person is reassured to do another day, to stay alive another day, in some ways culture can reach places that all these social workers and schools and governments cannot get to. So I'm really trying to get to the whole notion of what sustains people through times of thick and thin, good and bad, up and down. What sustains us? And sometimes it is sharing. Sometimes it is having people around you. But other times it's in you, in terms of yourself as a culture creator, in terms of not just a consumer of this stuff, but a creator of poetry. This is what I love about spoken word poetry. All of these high school kids who all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but who realize they love poetry. Not the poetry that's in school that says it's all Emily Dickinson and all of that, but the kind of poetry that they can create and move to, and that moves them, and that they speak for themselves. Now that's very powerful. And that wasn't there 20, 30 years ago. But what's different now is that also has the ability to travel. Maybe it was there 20, 30 years ago, but it was still very local. No one knew about it. But now we've got such a big space with that hip hop has created. I actually think the question is, what's next? That's my question at this point. It's always looking to the next frontier. So I think we're in a position of analyzing what hip hop has accomplished, the space that it has cleared, the people that it has saved, the people that it is not saved, the people that it represents, the people that it doesn't represent. And also, I want to point out, this was not part of my presentation, but hip hop is the universal language of global youth. So it's not just Black youth in the United States or Black youth in Brazil. It's very much been taken up, as should a cultural expression be, and has been transformed and used in other places to express similar issues. So that, I think, is really powerful. But that doesn't take away from the fact that we all live in specific places that are nation states with the citizenship requirements where you belong or you don't belong, or we live in cities with police forces. So we are all living in particular spaces and times. But hip-hop culture creates a space that acknowledges that, but that transcends that. It offers possibilities if you are stuck, or if you think you are stuck. So I'm looking for ways to talk about that, so that that possibility can reach somebody that just says, all I can do is try and care for my baby. That's political. That's survival politics. That's if you can find a way to survive and nurture someone who can become a grown human being. I find that to be bucking the odds about Black life isn't worth anything. You see, that to me is how I look at slavery. That's how I look at a lot of things. So I'm not out here micromanaging people's politics in terms of particularly ideological. It's more about, this is really a human project. What will it take for Black people to be free? What will it take for Black people to feel fully human and to live as fully human beings freely? So I don't know where, it's a long day. It's a long talk. I talked, we keep talking. So, there's just a lot out there. I feel I've just sort of put a lot out there that what I'm trying to do, because I do theoretical work and conceptual work, I'm trying to take all these scattered pieces and make them talk to each other. I think in a lot of ways what I'm trying to do is kind of a hip-hop project, right? Which is sampling, this one, da-da-da-da-da. How does that work together to create something that didn't exist before? So that's often how I see my work. I can't find it anywhere. I'm going to have to try and do it myself. So, I don't know, but that's really the spirit of this talk and being experimental about that. And, I think music is central. I mean, you talk to kids, that's central to them. I don't have time to listen to music. I'm too busy doing all this other stuff. Or I hate to say it, but that's the reality of my life. But notice how I put in this talk cultural politics as the politics of young people, because of being excluded from other forms. Protest, you can certainly protest as a young person. But in terms of something where you can be creative, fully creative, that's what the, quote, the arts can do. So that's the spirit of the talk. And I'm going to stay with the work. We'll see where it takes me.
Mas, gente, nada mais a dizer. Patricia Hill Collins, muito obrigada, querida.
I think I see the show.